Today I'm going to tell you a story my father told me. Back in 2004, when my dad, Jon Parkman, was a senior state archaeologist with California State Parks, he helped lead the members of the California State Park Commission on a tour of Sugarloaf Ridge State Park, about an hour's drive north of San Francisco. At the time, several of the members of the commission were quite well known, including a famous lawyer, the nephew of President John F. Kennedy, and a celebrated movie star and director. The most famous of the group was the latter. This was the first time my dad met Clint Eastwood. After a bit of touring, they stopped and everyone sat down at these wooden picnic tables at the park's group camp, adjacent to the Robert Ferguson Observatory. The tables were scattered about beneath a spectacular old oak tree, with pleasant views of the lush meadows and rounded hills in the background. This is where my dad had been asked to talk about the park's rich cultural history. The commissions were in town for their quarterly commission meeting, which was scheduled to occur in Santa Rosa the following day. At the meeting, they'd be taking public input from the state's proposed general plan, in which future projects and goals were outlined for Sugarloaf Ridge State Park. Typically, the commissioners would tour the park that was to be discussed the day before the public meeting occurred. Often, the commissioners asked professional park staff to talk about the cultural and natural histories of the parks being toured. That's a task my dad was occasionally asked to do, such as on this particular day in 2004. My dad told me that of all of the commissioners he worked with, Mr. Eastwood was the one that listened intently to what was being said. And he told me that you'd best be prepared because Mr. Eastwood would come back later and ask well-thought-out questions about the park and what you shared. For most of the following hour, my dad told the story of the park's history as the group sat there listening. Mr. Eastwood was sitting at a table nearby, and as my dad spun his story, Mr. Eastwood would look up at him from time to time. Otherwise, Mr. Eastwood appeared to be in deep thought. During my dad's career, he did hundreds and hundreds of public talks for all kinds of audiences in California and around the world. And he's been on TV and the movies too. People say that my dad is a great storyteller. When he was giving talks, my dad would often carry a backpack filled with little props, usually rocks and antlers and plastic animals like bison, mammoth, horse, and camel. He also had a really cool T-Rex, which he'd pull from the bag when he was talking about the age of rocks. The night before the tour of Sugarloaf, my dad assembled the props in his bag, and to his horror, he couldn't find the T-Rex. He looked and finally gave up looking. But what was he to do about a dinosaur? Well, he came up with a solution. I'm not sure why he had it, but my dad had this plush toy of Barney the purple dinosaur. So he put Barney in his bag of tricks along with the mammoth, bison, horse, etc. The next day, as my dad was giving his talk at the group camp, he pointed to an adjacent outcrop of Franciscan greywacke, a sedimentary rock dating to the late Jurassic early Cretaceous period, and he told about how there were dinosaurs when this rock was formed millions of years ago. As he did, he reached into his bag and pulled out Barney. My dad told me that Mr. Eastwood looked at him with one of those movie scowls that Mr. Eastwood had on his face when the man with no name was about to draw. Fortunately for me, Mr. Eastwood didn't have his trusty six-shooter that day, and my dad lived to tell another tale. Interestingly, a couple of years later, my dad was helping lead another one of these tours, this time at Sonoma State Park. My dad got tasked with driving the van full of commissioners into the backcountry of Willow Creek, a recent acquisition for the park. Mr. Eastwood was seated immediately behind my dad. My dad drove for several hours while pointing out various features of the property. At one point they were parked and discussing an area where local hooligans were coming in to party and target shoot. The Rangers had attempted to halt the unwanted activity with only limited success. My dad told me that Mr. Eastwood commented on what he would do to stop the unwanted activity, but he did it in the voice of Inspector Harry Callahan, his character from the Dirty Harry movies. Everyone laughed and my dad said that Mr. Eastwood remained in character for a bit longer. My dad told me that it was one of the highlights of his career, driving Mr. Eastwood around that day. As my dad was concluding his talk at the group camp, he said that he noticed that Mr. Eastwood was looking down and kicking his feet gently against the ground. At the start of my dad's talk, he had noted that the group camp was near the site of an ancient seasonal camp, a place where native people had once come to hunt deer and gather acorns. As Mr. Eastwood quietly kicked at the loose earth, my dad found himself wishing that he would unearth an arrowhead. He said that it would have made for an incredible interpretive moment for the tour. He knew that the experience of an unexpected discovery like this would likely have stayed with Mr. Eastwood for years to come. Unfortunately, no such arrowhead appeared. A few days later, my dad returned to the group camp while out walking. For many years, we lived inside the park, and that's where I grew up. The group camp was just a short walk from our house. And this is in my opinion, the most fascinating part of the story. My dad told me that he sat down at the exact same table where Mr. Eastwood had been sitting, and to his great surprise, he spotted an arrowhead resting on the surface nearby. It lay not more than 2 feet where Mr. Eastwood had sat, barely visible against the black dirt. It was made of obsidian and dated back to about 1,000 years ago. My dad picked the arrowhead up and held it in his hand, imagining what it would have been like if Mr. Eastwood had found the point instead of him. To this day, my dad wishes he had. He told me that it would have made Mr. Eastwood's day. I know that it would have made mine.